You're listening to 419 Education and Training Need to Connect podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Need to Connect podcast. I'm your host and founder of the Black Massage Therapist, Devonna Willis, and today we have Cindy Farrar. She will be our keynote speaker at this year's conference. But before we get into the conversation, let me just do some housekeeping. So please like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Also, share amongst all your friends and colleagues about the Black Massage Therapist Conference. Hopefully you have registered, and if you haven't, do so now. Okay, information about our speakers is on the website at www.blackmassagetherapist.com. The hotel information, and we have discounted rates specifically for our hotel attendees. And last but not least, I want to shout out to the shirt that I'm wearing, the I Am Black History. You can see that. And then on the back, it says Black Massage Therapist. Okay, so we have a couple of the shirts. I have a long sleeve on right now. We also have short sleeve, tank tops, and all some great shirts. So wear your shirt for the conference and support and represent. So now on to the podcast. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, Devonna.
How are you doing today?
Doing great.
Great. So Cindy is National President of AMTA. Woo! Congratulations. Congratulations. So how do you feel about it?
Well, last year when I was elected president-elect, the word for the year was giddy. I never used that word before in my life that I recall until that moment. Okay. It seems somewhat surreal, but it's very exciting.
Yes. And so now that you're officially president and you was inducted, what month? In February? March?
March.
Okay.
March 1st it took effect, and a week later I was sworn in.
Okay. So now you're a little bit over a month, going on 2 months. What does that look like for you now? Does your life change tremendously, or like more responsibility, more meetings? How does that look? Because we're so used to our therapists being in a 10 by 10 or 12 by 12 room, right? And seeing clients or doing mobile. There's other aspects into being a massage therapist in the industry. And so I want to say this is an extremely high regard industry change, right?
It is, yes. Yes, it is. Yeah.
So for all those members of AMTA, how can they strive to do this?
It's exciting to see that, AMTA and our profession, is, moving with where we at as a culture, as a community, and embracing that.
Right. And so it's exciting. It's an exciting time.
It is. And, along with, being able to support the Black Massage Therapist Conference, as, we've done in the last 2 years.
Yes.
Very pleased and proud to be this year's gold sponsor as well. And, with me being president it's an added bonus.
Absolutely. Yes. So the AMTA being the gold sponsor for the last 3 years, because I consider we're in the middle of planning right now. So so we definitely appreciate it. We definitely appreciate the support, and you guys come deep when you come. Right.
That we do. It's, it's full on representation of, the commitment that we have to our members,
right,
and representing all of our members.
Right. And so let's just give a little history and a background to the people. Let people know, where are you first? Because everyone knows, or they know that I'm in Arizona. So where are you?
I am just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And I like to say I'm in Atlanta by way of Connecticut. I grew up in Connecticut. Those are my roots, and I always want to give honor to my roots. But yeah, so I'm just outside of Atlanta right now. And yeah.
And do you have your own practice?
I do. I own Massage Associates of Atlanta, which is a wellness center. We just December celebrated 26 years in business. Ooh. And yeah, I'm actually sitting, this is actually my classroom that I'm sitting in right now.
Oh, nice. It looks like you're in your living room.
It's an old ranch house.
Okay.
That was converted years ago for other purposes.
Oh, nice.
And it's a perfect fit for my practice. I've been in this location for 10 years.
Okay, so how many rooms? How many treatment rooms?
I've got 7 therapy rooms. Well, technically 6 therapy rooms, and one of the rooms is I use for my coaching and consulting.
Okay.
I've got a large classroom as well.
Nice. So what's the square footage of the facility or house?
2,200.
Wow, Cindy, that's big.
Yeah. And we've got an amazing backyard with a tree that's about 250 years old. I like to say that she and I take care of each other. And I've done drum circles and community events and yoga and Tai Chi classes underneath her wonderful canvas as well.
Yeah, I need to come visit.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you're going to be in Atlanta soon, aren't you?
I am in June in Cummings. How far are you from there?
Yeah, it's a little bit. It's a ways. It's probably a good 45 minutes or so. And of course, with Atlanta traffic, you can probably add on a little bit extra. But maybe we can find a way for you to.
We're gonna figure this out.
We can have a meal.
I want to see. Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll figure this out. Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. So what do you teach? Because you say you're consulting. So what do you consult?
Well, I'm a certified life and business coach and consultant.
Right.
Certainly a little different than the coaching aspect, but I've been doing the consulting piece for many, many years. Mm-hmm. And so that's that piece of it that I do. And then I'm also a certified Qigong and Tai Chi instructor. And I teach those classes. And we've had yoga in the past. And I've just contracted with the Tucker Yoga Cooperative, women who own that business, and they're going to be holding their classes out of my office starting May 15th.
Nice.
So we're probably we're going to have about a dozen yoga classes running every week now.
Oh wow, Cindy, that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome.
And then of course I do continuing ed as well. So I'll teach my continuing ed classes out of here and have.
Okay. Yeah. And so what continuing education classes are you teaching?
Wow, that's a big question. I've got probably about, last I looked, as I recall, probably about 10 classes, I think. I've got several ethics classes and business classes. And then I've got a TMJ class and a authentic client-centered massage therapy 1 and 2.
What is that?
Which is 2 of my favorite classes. It's being able to approach our sessions and our relationships with our clients from a client-centered perspective. We talk about that a lot, right? We say, I'm a client-centered massage therapist. And if we really break it down and look at it, much of what we do is from the therapist perspective. And so we delve into the class number 1 really delves into and breaks down every aspect of what we do with our clients from their perspective. And then the second part of it gets into the mindfulness piece of it.
Okay.
And how can we be so exquisitely present that we facilitate the healing process for our clients.
I like that. So how many hours is that class?
Part 1 and 2 combined are 12 hours. So there's 6 hours each.
6 hours each. Okay.
Yep. And then I've got the 3 Bs of optimal wellness, boundaries, breath work, and bellies. And, my background is in sales and marketing, mostly. And so when we're talking about, putting titles and naming classes, it's going to be something that's going to grab you. My TMJ class is, TMJD, it ain't all in your head. And full body approach to addressing TMJ.
Okay, I love that. I didn't know all of this, Cindy. I don't see you posting your classes, or am I just missing them?
Well, with my commitment, it's with AMTA. It's, my time has been limited, certainly last year.
Okay.
And certainly, and more so this year. And with that, there's the consideration of when I'm teaching that there's not a conflict of interest. So if I'm teaching like one of our chapters, when I was a director, I had to be very clear that in this moment, teaching you as Cindy Farrar, compensation is to Cindy Farrar. It's not as an AMTA director. Being president-elect and president, even the idea of being compensated by one of our chapters just muddies the water way too much.
I understand.
So, I can still teach out of my classroom and things like that,
right.
But it's, So I've just decided to keep it cleaner and focus where my focus needs to be. And so this year I'm not teaching at all.
Okay.
I'll do a few classes next year, especially it's a renewal year for Georgia next year. So there'll be more.
I'll be back again next year. So this time me coming to Georgia, it's actually not mostly for MTs. It's actually for ATs, athletic trainers.
Oh, awesome.
So it's at a physical therapy clinic. I'll be teaching my class. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, so they contacted me to come out and teach a sports massage class this year.
Very good.
And that's been my goal, right? Because as an athletic trainer and a massage therapist, like we're all multifaceted, and I wanted to add both of my loves together. And it's important for rehab to add that manual therapy aspect, right? And so I'm happy that they're finally it's coming together.
Yeah. Well, that's tremendous. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really the motivation for me getting into coaching. I'd been doing a lot of business consulting, goodness gracious, long time. And I had sought out either a coach or a psychologist or something to work with, because we have a lot of clients, that we know the roots of what they're dealing with sometimes is not the physical.
Amen.
It's outside of our scope to go there. And that person wasn't showing up for me to hire and bring in. And it was placed upon my heart to pursue it.
Okay.
And so I have the opportunity now to make that available to our clients.
I love that. Hello, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share our 419 Education and Training Need to Connect podcast. So let's just go back a little bit. How long have you been a licensed massage therapist practicing?
Okay, so I've been practicing since 1997.
Okay.
Georgia got licensure in 2007.
Oh.
So that's why I said it that way, as I've been practicing for 10 years before Georgia actually got licensure.
Did you get it from when you were in Connecticut or?
No, I was in Atlanta.
Okay.
Atlanta School of Massage.
Okay.
Graduated from there, and 3 years later, I went back and started teaching there. So I was assistant director of education for the deep tissue massage and integrated therapies program and the business and marketing curriculum chair. So I was there for 7 years doing that piece, as well as growing my business. So did that for about 10 years and then needed to really focus on my business. So I left the classroom and started doing this.
Okay. And unfortunately, I heard last year they closed, right?
Yeah, they started in 1980. So,
wow.
They had been around for 24 years.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 44 years, 44 years, excuse
44
me.
years, 1980, yeah.
44 years, yeah.
That is old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a big loss. It really is. And, we move on, right? Things change and we have to embrace it.
Right. There's other massage schools there, but that was one of the bigger ones, correct?
It was definitely one of the bigger ones. And, going back to our roots, it was where massage started in Atlanta.
Okay.
And it started actually out of the living room of the two founders.
Gotcha.
In their apartment. So, the history, and we always add and be mindful of it.
Right.
So, but there's still some very good schools there.
Okay.
Here. Yeah.
All right, so now I want to talk about the conference. So you've attended all three.
I have, yes.
So tell me your perspective as an attendee first, not as a sponsor, but as an attendee. Let's start with 2023 because I didn't know what I was doing.
Well, that being said, with it being the first year, and this is not, to just try to flatter you by any means, and credit is due where credit is due. You did a phenomenal job.
Right. Thank you.
If there were things going on behind the scenes, it wasn't obvious to the attendees.
Right.
So, from an attendee, the biggest takeaway from me as a Black massage therapist was the freedom that we had, the freedom to be us,
right?
And be able to share and support one another, with our particular unique needs as Black massage therapists,
right?
And that was the biggest takeaway, the community that was afforded to us.
Amen. Yeah, I definitely, I'm grateful for the team that I had. We all kind of came together. I felt like the speakers and Ashley, like we were all one because it was like, this is all new for everyone. And so it was definitely, I felt the camaraderie. One of the visions that I always see, and we even have it on video, is when everyone was in the lobby having, meeting, networking and enjoying each other, drinking, eating. It was just good. And you guys were up to the late nights. I had to go to bed, but I remember seeing that.
Yeah.
I was like, this is what it's about. This is what it's about.
Yeah. It was also nice to be able to be there in person with each other.
Right.
Many of us and myself, knew people from, your page, your Facebook page. Little story, if I may. Sakina, who is teaching this year.
Yes.
She and I met. I was teaching a different workshop not related to massage. And I had met Sakina on Facebook and invited her to be part of that workshop, which she did. And there I am at the 2023 Black Massage Therapist Conference, standing in line for registration and, chatting it up with folks around you. And all of a sudden I hear this voice say, "Hi, Cindy." And I'm thinking, I know that voice. Yes. How do I know that voice?
Her voice is distinguished.
And I'm looking and she, says, "It's Sakina." Well, I had only seen her, on the little 2x2 Zoom. And Sakina towers over me. If you don't know Sakina, she's and I looked at her and the first words out of my mouth was, "You look the same height as me on Zoom." I would have never known. And so it was very, having those moments of being able to come together, that sort of stuff is priceless to me.
Amen.
And that's what I carry with me from that. Yeah.
I love that. No, it's so funny you said that because obviously through Facebook, meeting people. I'm a lonely Black therapist out here in Phoenix, Arizona. That was the reason why I started that group page, right? Especially during the whole George Floyd's social unrest. And so Sakina and I, communicating through Facebook and liking each other's comments. And, she's in New York and I'm from New York. And we just had some things that we kind of bonded about. And then to see her in person, yes, she's definitely taller than myself. But then the hug, it was such an authentic hug. It was
Absolutely.
It was like you're my sister, you're my cousin, it was that type of hug and love. And those are the things that I remember, and it helps me keep going regarding the conference. All right, so that was first year. Year two, we doubled the days.
You doubled the days. I don't know certainly your numbers in terms of attendance, but
doubled the numbers.
There was more, there was because there was kind of a I'll call it a kind of a nucleus of those of us who were there the first year. There was just this sense of coming in knowing, that we were in for something really special. The highlights from last year is we had done the rehearsal, and I think by the time it ended, I forgot what time it was, but it had been a long day, and I was getting ready to go up to my room, and I looked over in the lobby, and there was a group of, Black massage therapists sitting around in the lounge, seeming like they were having a nice time. So I said, let me go say hello. And I get over there, and what comes out of my mouth is, can I join you? And I was like, I didn't expect that to come out, but okay. And they said, of course, without hesitation. And I sit down and I'm handed a card, and I'm like, what did I get myself into? And they were playing a conversation game, where each card had a different question on it. And I was like, I just came over to say hello. I didn't know.
Now you're in. Now you're in on it.
It was one of the most, what can I say, impactful experiences I had, because the questions were not light questions. I mean, we were talking about life after death and gun rights and innate goodness of people. I mean, these were deep, deep questions.
Right.
And the conversation was respectful. It was thoughtful. Not everyone agreed. Mm-hmm. And that's what was so beautiful, is that we were able to have deep, honest, personal conversation from a place of respect and dignity.
I love that.
And I was like, could this happen anywhere else? I don't know if it could have. So I ended up getting up to my room about 2 hours later, but that's what it's about. It's that spontaneous moments of connecting.
Right.
And that's what last year was for me.
I love that. Okay. So now let's flip the coin. Now, okay. As a sponsor exhibitor, first year.
Mm-hmm. Yep. For first year, we were kind of trying to figure it out too. We had our team of folks there, and we had our table. I think it for us, it would flowed better having the tables inside the room. Mm-hmm. The first year we were out in the hallway, mm-hmm. and the first year I wasn't at the table. I was mingling. Yeah. And, last year I made a point of being at the table and really being able to meet folks that way. Mm-hmm. So that was nice for me. And I got to meet the other vendors, which I didn't afford myself the time to do as much the first year. Okay. And there seemed to be, more camaraderie, even among the vendors last year, which also was, just a nice environment to be in.
Okay, good. Yeah. So you kind of put year 1 and 2 together.
And you could see the progression, right? And that's what it's about. You could see where, the first year was, we're getting our feet wet, we're figuring this out, and we're doing this thing.
Right, we're here. We're here.
Last year, you did the thing, right? You really brought it and solidified it. You gave it its feet.
Right. I love that. Thank you. I appreciate that. So now here's some of the questions. So what are some unique challenges you face as a Black massage therapist, and how have you overcome?
For me, it showed up more in the business aspect of growing my business, and having bankers or other businesses be willing or not to take chances. One, a massage therapist in the South, and 2, a Black woman massage therapist. Right. And that's, ticking all the boxes, right? And the way I've overcame it is just doing it. Mm-hmm. And there were times where I was told no and the doors were closed and all of that. Mm-hmm. And I had a choice to make. Was I going to allow that to stop me, or was I going to push through anyway and do it however I needed to do it? And that's what I've done. And, where the doors were closed, 15, 20 years ago, I get to look and say, look, 26 years, I'm still here, and some folks have done opportunities, but, I continue to follow my purpose and stay on point with that.
And what would you say to Black massage therapists? I'm just want to take it from women specifically, because obviously our community is more women in general. Single moms who are trying to start their own business.
Well, I was a single mom starting.
Okay, well, let's talk about that.
My daughter was a little older, but I was, single mom going through massage school, and starting the business, and it's community. You drawing on those in your circle that you have currently.
I love that.
And expanding that circle as you need to. And being able to ask for help. We as Black women tend to be a little proud at times,
right?
And think we have to do it all, because that's our heritage. That's what we grew up with. That's what our mothers grew up with and our grandmothers,
right?
And there's no shame in being able to ask for help, and there's no shame in saying, what, maybe now is not the time to expand. Maybe now I maintain until I can then expand.
Right. I love that.
And honoring ourselves in that, respecting ourselves, and being able to have what we need, the resources within ourselves to then give to our children.
Right. I love it. So being in Atlanta or in the outskirts, is more Black people in general, the community.
Yeah.
What would you say, let's just start this. What would you say the percentage of your clientele were Black?
It's interesting because my business is not as racially diverse as Atlanta proper.
Okay.
So, there's more. I would say the percentage of Black clients, I don't know, maybe 10% right now.
Okay.
And that's increased over the last 2-3 years. It used to be a lot less. So yeah, and that's part of the community that I'm in, and it's just where I landed. So that's somewhat of a challenge,
right?
Not as much as it is now, because I've been here for so long. My reputation speaks for itself,
right? So
I don't have to combat a lot of the, we'll just say, hesitation that might be there on the part of our non-Black community, because they know the name,
right?
And I specifically chose a very generic name for my business, Massage Associates of Atlanta. Right. That sounds very, very boring.
Very. Yes, for the wordsmith. Yes, being a wordsmith, exactly. You kept it real straight lace.
I did. I didn't want there to be any confusion about what we were doing or who we were. And, you're coming here for massage. That's what we're about.
That's it. So let me ask you this. So going back to the massage school and being in the massage school during the clinicals, what was the community like? So who would come? What was the percentage you would say then for the students to work on the outside customers?
Well, now you're asking me about 26 years ago. That's a little bit difficult.
No, but like when you were teaching, or
when I was teaching. We're still about 20 years ago, but I mean, I would say that there was probably more diversity in the clients of our student clinic.
Okay.
Because of the location of where the school was.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to find. Yeah.
And also, the school also had the history as well.
Okay.
So they were known. And the clinic that we had was a actual clinic. And I know that the school at one point actually was criticized in a sense that they were told that they were setting unrealistic expectations for their students because the clinic was so nice that perhaps that's not where the students were going to end up, in a place that was so nice. So again, it attracted, a much more diverse population. It still wasn't, as diverse as, you're going to get if you're in the heart of Atlanta or someplace like that. But or Charlotte or, some other community, but it still had the opportunity there.
Okay. So a little change in conversation. So what do you see are some of the trends, the current trends in the health and wellness space?
Health and wellness space in general, or as it relates to
in general, and then how can like the Black community be more involved in some of the trends that's happening right now?
Okay. The thing that speaks to me the loudest for our Black community is the wellness aspect. We tend to be more health related, meaning that we're not as preventative. We tend to address things as the symptoms start showing up.
Right.
By the time the symptoms start showing up, we're all the way going towards illness if we're not already there.
That's correct.
And so what encourages me about seeing, massage embraced more in the Black community is that it indicates that there's a perception change that perhaps if we take care of, ourselves from the preventative aspect, we may not have to, or at least we can maybe delay some of the, the illnesses that, tend to show up in our people, So that's one of the trends is seeing more Black men and women embracing massage and embracing it, not because they're in pain, but because it makes them feel better and relieve stress.
Right. And also help with the immune system, right? So like for myself, specializing in lymphatic, let's help boost your immune system.
There you go.
To decrease the illnesses, right? And being in tune in what your body, right? That mind-body connection.
Yeah. And, and think about, culturally, society-wise, there's a heck of a lot more stress on us right now.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And we know the impacts of stress on the body. Yeah, that's one of the things that drew me to massage ultimately. I started seeing a chiropractor who was really big on educating his patients on, the body and the effects of stress and how we can mitigate that. And so, here we have an opportunity that, the world right now is kind of scary. And there's a lot of stress on top of our day-to-day stress. And so here's a way that we can help to, lessen the impact that stress has on us.
I love that. All right. So last and final question, Miss Cindy, is I always like to ask this question in all of the podcast interviews because I'm an educator and so are you. So resources, what are some resources that our therapists can read, go on and listen to a podcast? What would be some resources that you would say that they should be looking into now?
Well, I'm a big book person. I'm still a paper book person.
Okay.
I also have history in managing Walden Books and Borders. So, I still like to hold a book, and I gravitate more, our industry is wonderful in that there's a lot of opportunities for education, right? Whether it's in-person classes, of course, the AMTA chapters all have classes that are available. We've got classes online. A lot of them are free. Those are always good resource for us. And, I always look for the things that aren't as readily available and that are the game changers. So I look for the things like the mindfulness classes, or books, the affirmations, the things that aren't as readily available that we know that when we start doing them make the difference for us,
right?
Because we've got that gap, right? You talked about mind body, and so we focus a lot on the body. Right. So, what can we do about the mind? So those are where I gravitate toward. And there's all sorts of, podcasts, there, masterclass, I love the masterclass series.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
OM is a good resource, the TED Talks, those, and then, books. I can't even begin to tell you about books because we'd be here the rest of the day.
Okay, but no, that's great. I love that, the mindfulness, because we're always talking about the body, right? But what's happening? How are you renewing your mind? How do you wake up? Do you wake up in morning meditation, prayer, things of that nature?
Yeah. And when things get tough, what do we do? Because we'll feel it in our bodies. We know there's that connection. and what's going on up there is going to affect it. So, when we start feeling the gut starting to tighten, the vagus nerve is starting to get activated.
Right.
So how do we regulate it? So looking at those. Breath work is another huge element that I bring into my sessions and practice myself, because it is the fastest way to regulate the vagus nerve. So is singing. So all that singing we do in the cars, we can eliminate some of the road rage.
That's true. Because sometimes, Cindy, I'm sitting there, my whole New York personality want to hit that horn, and I have to remember that just happened last night, by the way. I'm sitting there, right, and I have to tell this story. So I'm sitting there, and for us, I'm like, this dude could make a right. Is that a light? But there's no cars coming. I'm like, this dude can make a right. But within the last couple of weeks, and even my husband noticed, these cops has been driving like Chargers and Mustangs and the things. And so it was a Charger in front of me. So I'm like, I'ma just chill out, right? Because I was like, you never know, because the undercover cops, because they've been getting people, because all you see is whoop whoop, and you're like, what? A whole right. And so I was like, let me just chill out. There's no rush. I'm almost home. And then also he was in a Charger driving slow. In a 45, he was driving like 35. And I'm like, you know what? I already know what this is. Let me just take a chill pill, right? And those are the things you have to like reassess. Or, I learned this a long time ago, like at a sermon. You never know what happens, like driving. You never know what happens minutes before you get there. So if there was a delay or something you did at home, or your kids was acting crazy, you got out the house late, but you missed that accident.
Exactly. Yep.
Right? Yeah. And I like that resonated with me so much, because I, coming out here to Arizona, the New York state of mind really don't leave you. I'm born and raised there. Like it's inside of me. It's innate, right? And sometimes I'm going to go. But then when things happen and I'm like, or if I pass by, like, all right, God, thank you, Lord. I see. All right, I'm gonna chill, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's taking that minute to kind of sit and think like, okay, what's the reason why is this really happening? Maybe something's happening that I shouldn't be involved with, or I'm being protected from. I'm being protected from.
Right. Yeah.
So I love that. So we're coming to the close. Is there anything you want to share with us regarding what you're doing? AMTA, I know the convention is in August, right? But is there anything else you want to share with us? You go, this is your floor.
This is my floor. Goodness gracious. I appreciate the opportunity. Again, I've been a huge supporter and enthusiastically sharing all about, the conference, from the moment I first learned about it. Before, my last couple of years, I was teaching all over the country, and everywhere I was like, did you know about that? Do you know about that? I appreciate that. And, again, I continue to be encouraged by the willingness of our community stakeholders, our professional stakeholders, to support Black massage therapists and, our diverse community in general.
Amen.
Because we have to embrace, again, all of our massage therapists. My sign off that I use for AMTA is Ubuntu. I am because we are. And that's my vision for, certainly not only AMTA, my presidency with them, but also for our larger community.
Amen.
And my commitment to keeping the therapy and massage therapy, as I like to say.
I love that.
Never losing sight of the person, because at the end of the day, everyone that comes into us is unique in what their needs are, and it's not about us as massage therapists, but it's about what their need is, so, any opportunity I have to share that, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I'm so happy that you said yes to being our keynote for this year. And we're looking forward to seeing you
Yes,
again.
absolutely.
And I'll probably see you before the conference.
I hope so. Well, we got June. You're going to be in Atlanta, and I hope you're going to be in Dallas.
And in Dallas. Yes, so I'm definitely going to see you before. But thank you so much. I'm excited. I'm excited for your presidency. I can't wait to see the things that you have in store.
All righty. Stay tuned.
All right. Thank you guys so much for watching this podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hello, please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget, check out our next podcast episode. See you later. Bye.